I'm not done yet criticizing why DPS players are ruining ranked matches in Marvel Rivals, and I recorded a video already about this. You can see it here on the link on the screen. However, I'm just not done. There's just more that has happened. There's more responses that people gave to my videos and feedback, and it's just too much for me to not say anything and include these other reasons on why DPS players are ruining ranked matches. And yes, on this video, I'm playing a DPS player because I'm trying to be the change that I want to be, right? And so I'm going to be playing Iron Fist in the first video in a ranked match here, and then I believe if I just get going and ramble long enough, it'll be a video of me playing a tank. So let's get started on why DPS players are ruining ranked matches part 2, and the last 2 reasons are probably the biggest ones that I have a beef with. But I'm also going to create videos that are going to be criticizing strategists and tanks as well, and how they're wrecking the matchmaking experience in ranked games in Marvel Rivals. But the DPS role, I mean, every role is important, but the DPS role is very unforgiving. You have to secure kills. You have to help secure kills. And if you're not doing that one thing, then no one else in the team can get anything done. Your tanks can't get anything done. They're just going to get obliterated. Your strategists can't get anything done because everyone's going to be dead, or they're going to be dead. So either way, no healing's being done. So as a DPS, if the match isn't going well, it's probably mostly your fault. Oh, and for the armchair Marvel Rivals esports high rank specialists who happen to be watching this video and you want to leave comments on what I didn't do right as Iron Fist, I'm welcome to hearing your feedback, because for some reason when you can't have a conversation and argue about the points I'm making, you just go to attack my gameplay. So that's fine, go ahead, go for it. All right, let's get going. The first toxic trait that ruins ranked matches that DPS players have is that they don't think it's their job to peel back and protect the strategist. And I saw proof of this when people started making comments on my Instagram and YouTube. DPS players were coming out of the woodwork and arguing, well, it's not my job to protect the strategist. And then you, at the same time, you're going to hear tank players, I guarantee you, you're going to hear tank players say, well, it's not my job to protect the strategist. I'm in the front line fighting the other tanks. Well, then whose job is it to help protect your strategist when they're getting dived by Venom and Thor and Iron Fist or Magic? And speaking of Magic, in this gameplay here in the last minute or so, you've seen me go after Magic every time she appears, because I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and practice what I preach, and that I want to protect my strategist, because if they can heal everyone, then our chances of winning go up exponentially. All right, so DPS players who think it's not your job to protect strategists, you're absolutely wrong, and it's wrecking ranked matches. Move on to the next thing that DPS players do to ruin ranked matches, and I observed a lot of this through my great experience with solo queuing in ranked in season 2. It's been absolutely atrocious. I'm seeing DPS players ban other DPS players in the character select screen, or try to ban those players. I can't believe what I'm seeing. So if someone wants to play Spider-Man, they're a Lord Spider-Man, they put a lot of time into the character, then some other player all of a sudden starts trying to ban Spider-Man. That's really a great way to tilt your team and get other players upset, especially that player who wanted to play Spider-Man. Now, I don't think Spider-Man adds a lot of value at most times, and I don't think many Spider-Man players are really that good, but you still don't want to try to lock someone, especially if they're a Lord in that character and they've put the time into that character. It doesn't mean that they're great at that character, but they at least put the time into it to get the Lord. I also see people ban player characters that they want to play, and it's like this, well, if I can't play this character, no one's going to play that character. And I think that's real childish and petty. And again, it just ruins the experience for certain people on your team, and your team's not going to play as well. And certainly that player that's getting targeted banned is not going to play that well either. So it's very short-sighted and a great way to sabotage your match in ranked. And while we're on the subject of not getting the character you want, there's another thing I'm seeing that really upsets me, is when I'm in a ranked match and someone quits the match, usually a DPS player, they quit the match because their character got banned or someone else locked the character they wanted to play. So either if the banning doesn't work, then they just leave the match. And if they leave the match later on in the match, beyond the first minute or 2 of the match, then what happens is the match goes on and doesn't cancel, and you're at 5v6 the whole match until you usually fight it through, or most of the time we just decide to surrender because 5v6 is just really not going to work. And so everyone loses, all right? Just because someone threw a tantrum. They didn't get the character they wanted. The character they wanted to play got banned, and so they decided to just quit the match and put up with the penalty and then just leave everyone else to get screwed over. And that's just so infuriating. So stop doing that. Speaking of surrendering ranked matches, this is the next thing DPS players do that drive me crazy, and it's mostly DPS players who are having a bad match and they're not switching. They're doing all the other things I described in my previous video that DPS players do or don't do to throw the match. They surrender too easily. They surrender on the drop of a dime. They surrender if one round goes wrong, and they don't give anyone on the team to make adjustments or any way to change gameplay or anything to adapt to overcome the other team. I've been in many ranked matches where it looks really dire, and then the last part of the match, we all lock in and we pull out a win. So many people just never want to give that a chance. And how are you going to get better at this game if you quit every time things get hard and you don't face off against other players who have better skills or teams that have different compositions that you're not used to fighting or that are countering you well? You're not going to learn anything. You're just going to learn to be a quitter and not being able to handle any challenges in life. Now, I get it. If one person leaves the match and it's 5v6 or something going on like that, that makes sense to surrender at that point. Surrendering really only saves you time. A lot of people think that surrendering saves you the points and loss, and that's actually not really true. If you're going to lose, you're going to lose whether you surrender or you just play through the game and cannot beat the other team. You're going to have to take the L and take the point loss. But at least you can learn something. At least you can improve yourself and use that experience to get better at this game. All right, I think I beat that dead horse a little too much, but you get my point. Let's move on to the next one. And this next one is staggering. I'm just speechless when I hear people talk about this. I've had people tell me in the comments that they think only tanks should fight tanks, so that DPS players should just go to try and chase skills with other squishies, right? Other DPS players or strategists. I can't believe what I'm hearing. I think a lot of people actually believe this. They think the tanks should only fight the other tanks, and there's a lot that can go wrong with this. For example, the other tanks can be Hulk and Thor, and if you ignore them and your tanks can't keep them off your backline, because your tanks are going after the strategists along with you, then guess who's ravaging your backline? It's the enemy tanks. Think about this. Have you ever had a match where the enemy thing or Thor just cannot be beat down no matter how much damage you try to put into them? It's because your team is fragmented and they're all focusing on different targets and no one's working towards a common purpose or goal together. There's no communication and there's just no instinct in the game to bring down that tank that is the biggest threat to your team making that objective. The argument I hear from a lot of people is that if you attack tanks, you feed the healers. And yes, that is entirely possible. And it's even worse if DPS is not helping by attacking the tanks as well. And so that tank really never gets completely finished off and they go back and get healed. That feeds the healers, DPS players. If you don't attack the tank and kill the tank and get the kill, you are feeding the healers. It's your fault. So those tanks have to be killed. They can't be brought close to death and then just left to be healed by their healers. We need the extra power on our team from our DPS players to help take down these tanks. And as I said in the last video, if the tank falls, the team will crumble and it's almost inevitable that you're going to win that battle. This is an enormous flaw in the mindset of so many DPS players, and I think this is probably one of the biggest reasons why I struggle as a strategist winning matches when I have DPS players that fall into that category and approach the game that way. Now, it's not that one strategy is always going to work and this always is the way it has to be done, but for the most part, the tanks are a huge threat, and I think it's not a bad way to start your match that way, and then you can adjust accordingly. If you can't take down the tanks and you need to focus on the strategist, then that's absolutely fine. That's going to work well with some teams, but this static approach of not changing the plan no matter what is why you lose so many matches. All right, go for the tanks, try to kill them. If you can't, then yes, try to figure something out, get the healers so then the tanks will go down. Whatever works for that team. Some teams have better healers than others. There's not one answer, but I could tell you that is a big issue. All right, so let's fix that. Here's some hubris I'm seeing from DPS players. Get a load of this. They think it's easy for strategists to counter divers and it's up to the strategist to shoulder that entire burden. I've seen players who are DPS players all the time say this. Well, Spider-Man's easy to counter a strategist. You just have to do do this and that. But the people who are saying that aren't the ones that are in the back line having to fight Captain America and Spider-Man at the same time, okay? So that is a really awful attitude, and it's why, again, as a strategist, I do struggle to win matches when we have 2 to 3 divers on the other team trying to dive us, and you've got people in the DPS role particularly that are saying, well, it's not my problem. You know, if you're a good strategist, you should be able to fight them off or avoid them. Well, yeah, maybe 2 strategists can heal each other at the same time to avoid Spider-Man or Black Panther. But when you've got Magic as well as the Hulk or Captain America as well back there in your face, it's just too much for you to handle. So you need to adjust your attitude and try to have a little compassion and help your strategist survive and also get some kills while you're at it. See, everyone wins. Now, as a DPS player, if you want to continue not winning, then I highly suggest that you continue to have no concept of team composition. How this looks is that maybe we have an Iron Man on the other team that is just uncontested, having free reign over the entire match, and our team has a Squirrel Girl and Magic who are either not focused on Iron Man, or even if they tried, could barely get him down to half health. The object of this game is to win by any means possible and to have the advantage, and that means choosing the right character for the right job. DPS players have the most flexibility to change roles and really change the tide of the battle. So a tank, for example, cannot easily shoot a flyer down. Maybe Doctor Strange can get up on the sky a little bit and work on Iron Man, but Doctor Strange should be down on the front line, holding the front line down with his shield. So as DPS players, you're in a special role, and it's your responsibility to switch to roles that can better fight the enemy team. And when you don't do that, you're sabotaging your match for everyone else. I beg of you, learn what hit scan is and choose players and get good at these players that have hit scan attacks. It will make your battles against the enemy team, especially the flyers, much easier. And with Ultron coming out this week, this is going to be a really big deal. And if you don't know how to play a player with hit scan like Punisher, Hela, Psylocke, Star-Lord, or even Luna, you're in for a miserable experience for yourself and a miserable experience that you're going to create for your teammates when you can't get those kills and you lose the match. Here's the final toxic sabotaging behavior I see from DPS players. There's usually 3 or 4 of you in a ranked match that try to lock a DPS player, and you force the rest of the team to flex to either tank or strategist. So then you wreck the team ratio of duelists, where you have 3 duelists and just 1 tank who's getting obliterated by the enemy team, and none of you duelists are getting your kills because you're playing your favorite character, and then your strategists are getting overrun by divers. For me to solo queue and matchmake as a duelist, I have to pretty much lock a duelist in and refuse to switch. I have to be the person that I don't really like. I have to be a hypocrite, because then it's a game of chicken when the match starts to see who's finally going to give in and switch to a tank or a strategist. And usually it's me, so I don't get to play duelist very often because I just hate doing that. I hate hard locking a player and not being able to switch. So yeah, if you want to play DPS and you're good at that DPS player, that's great, but also be open to switching to someone else if you're having a bad match, and give someone else a turn who may have a different idea on how to approach solving the problems against the enemy team. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you got to do it one way and that you can't play duelist at all, okay? I'm just saying, be a little flexible, be nice, don't be so selfish and childish. And that's it for my rant. I feel much better now, and if you want to argue with me about these points, I welcome your opinion and contribution. Please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more just thoughtful, emotional rants from yours truly. I'm 8-Bit the Cool Dad. Thanks for watching. See you next time.